Hi guys, welcome to another episode of In the Know. Today I'm delighted to be joined by copywriting extraordinaire Glenn Fisher. So Glenn's founder of All Good Copy, The Fix, and he's also wrote a best-selling book called The Art of the Click, which is great, gives great insight into copywriting for direct sales. Yeah, welcome Glenn.
Thank you for having me, Luke. I almost forgot I'd written a book then. I'm normally on the other side of this interviewing people, so
Yeah.
to kind of get that little précis of what's going on. And you're
Yeah.
saying these things, I'm thinking, do I do that? Am I still that person? Yes. And yeah, I did write a book. So.
Yeah, I apologise if I got going with the introduction to the book then and realised that I probably did.
It's now in Korean. I would have been impressed if you'd have started introducing it in Korean. But
No, it's but yeah, if you could you just kind of give us an introduction to maybe start with the various things that you're busy with at the moment.
So I am Glenn Fisher and I am a copywriter for my sins. I've been a copywriter now for, I don't know why I've started by trying to say how long it is, because I'm the worst person on dating putting the chronological order of my career together. But no, I've been a copywriter for probably about 15, somewhere between 50 and 20 years. We'll allow the maths to work out somewhere. At the moment, I am now freelance, self-employed. I write copy for all sorts of different companies. So I do a lot of direct response copywriting, which we'll probably dig down a little bit into for a big company in America who kind of use very specific types of copy. But then I do bits and bobs for all sorts of different brands, some big brands that people will know, small companies that people don't. I kind of just pick and choose. I'm in a very luxurious position and very privileged to be able to do that. And as well as that's kind of how I pay the mortgage, if you like. But then as a kind of side project, All Good Copy started as that kind of started as just me as a copywriter, in a business entity sense, and I wanted to kind of, that was my brand name, if you like. Then that evolved at one point that I started a podcast when everybody started a podcast in the world a few years back, and I call it the All Good Copy Podcast. So that was all of that kind of period, but then I stopped doing the podcast partly because in my spare time, it's a hobby. I'd like to swap round. So the copy is a hobby, and but I write novels. I'm trying to become a novelist, if you like, which sounds absurd.
I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, so I basically got to the point in my career where I was able to free up enough time to focus properly on that. But part of focusing on that meant that I didn't have time to give the creative energy that I would want to the podcast. I interviewed copywriters, but I also did comedy skits and parodies and satire on copywriting as a business as well. I had a character called Brad Platitudes, who was an American over-the-top kind of one of the reverends who are screaming and doing all this, but doing copy as well. And I really liked that. I did a whole section of based on the Melvin Bragg show In Our Time, which is this deeply philosophical show on Radio 4. And I had fake people talking, and they would skits between the things. So it was quite a creative outlet. And I figured that actually my edge, apart from my copy skill, my edge and my point of difference, or my USP, was the fact that I'm a bit quirky and a bit strange and have different ideas. And if I could bring them together, then that would create a better product. And that's what I did. So I did all that, but then I realized that I couldn't then be creative and work on the novel and stuff like that at the same time as giving as much time to the All Good Copy stuff. and still paying the mortgage and writing copy for various folks. So I stopped doing the All Good Copy podcast, and that coincided with the fact that it was a global pandemic and everything went crazy. Weirdly, just as that was happening, my hope for the podcast was to do it in person like this, because I think it gives interviews an authenticity, an edge that people can see, and there's better interaction. Don't get me wrong, you can do stuff on Zoom. I did one this morning, speaking to someone, we had a great conversation. But I wanted to do it in person, and then COVID and what have you happened, so I stopped doing that. So it was all there and thereabouts. A long way of saying, when that we came out of that, my old friend Nick O'Connor, who I'd worked in London with when I was working and living in London, training to be a copywriter and working in-house, we'd been for years talking about doing a copy project together, something that would just allow us to talk about copy generally. We didn't know what form it would take, but Nick had an idea about reviewing copy. And I'll maybe get into that a bit more as we talk about it. But he said, hey, why don't we start doing this now? Like, let's do it. And it was so open and kind of shambolic is the honest word, because me and Nick are both quite shambolic in the way we approach it. But I was like, yeah, well, one of the elements I wanted to do was with All Good Copy was to do the podcasts in person. So we kind of made that as part of it. So we do industry insight episodes like you do with this, where we will go around the country and actually turn up, interview a local expert. So we've just been to Leeds most recently and interviewed a woman called Penny and a guy called Lana there. We went to Manchester, saw a couple of people there, interviewed them, and then in the evening met with local copywriters and what have you, which is what The Fix is, which is my kind of main side project. Or if you imagine, I've got my novel creative writing world, my business like write copy for brands and make money world, and then my copy / creative project, which is The Fix. So that's where I am now. That seems like a long answer to a very simple question, but we'll put that on record.
Yeah,
no, that's the answer.
No, thanks for sharing. So if we backtrack, I guess, to
Yep.
How you initially got into, being a copywriter.
A copywriter, yes. So it was, as all like origin stories are strange and hopefully interesting. Is mine interesting? I think it is, maybe. But it's certainly different, and I've interviewed a lot of copywriters and found that everyone has these weird ways of getting into an industry. Copy seems to be weird because no one really knows what it is, which is weird because everything has words and everything needs words. Everybody who's selling anything needs words ultimately, but no one kind of knows where these words come from. They just kind of they just appear out of thin air, and I think that's a whole discussion point on people. Everybody can write, so everybody assumes they can write copy, but there is a sort of difference between that. But I was not a copywriter. I was at college, at sixth form, all the way through that, I was kind of arrowing and narrowing towards business, economics, and a bit of politics. And my idea was not to go to university. I was quite confident. There was like 4 of us at school, a friendship group of 4, and 2 of us were like, we're going to university, and 2 of us we're just getting jobs. So I kind of knew that I wanted to get a job, and I was studying economics and business, and I basically was going to become an accountant / auditor. I actually was an auditor, so I kind of went through college, did all that, and came out of college, got a job for the local council in North East Lincolnshire, and was in the system. I was done, cooked. I was doing my accountancy qualification, getting promoted, doing what have you, was good at it, as good as you can be at auditing. You wouldn't know that if you looked at my accounts these days. But I was doing all that, and it was all cool. Somewhere, and then something, I describe it as something breaking. I don't know what it was, but something in my mind clicked or twisted or snapped. And I realized I didn't want to do that. And that was not a path for me. It's all sounds kind of abstract, but I had an image of you meet someone, you get married, you have 2 kids, you get a mortgage for a house, you've got a good job where you wear the suit, and that's all cool, and that's where you go. And something went weird, and I don't know what it was. I don't know. Part of me thinks it was like some kind of melodramatic breaking up with your girlfriend or something like that, and or whatever. It was something stopped, like changed that moment in my head, and I was like, no, I want to do something different here. So, and I weirdly this was probably about like 22, I think. I'm not entirely sure. Again, the chronology doesn't quite work out when I try and add it all up, but somewhere around that time, I started like writing creatively. I'd never really been interested in writing. I wasn't like some kid at school writing short stories, or maybe I was, and I've not dug into this. Increasingly, I realized yesterday I was listening to someone talk about Terry Pratchett novels, and I thought, I used to really enjoy them as a kid. But currently my answer to like is I never read anything as a kid and all this. I was like, oh, maybe I did. So whatever memory I've made up. But my official account at the moment is that I was never into like writing. I read like, I had writerly or what I'd describe as like bookish friends. They've all become teachers or academics, and they exposed me to classic literature like George Orwell and James Joyce and all these things. So I knew of these things, but I wasn't interested in them, certainly not to the level I am now. But I was aware of them, but I thought it was all kind of serious, and I thought you had to suffer to be like a creative person, and I'd never really suffered as a kid. So I just kind of, that one there. I also got into punk music and punk bands at that time, so I was like, had that as a creative outlet. So everything seemed quite okay. But then when I got to that 22, somewhere around there, I started writing like silly stories, and I don't know why. I just started writing a thing. I can remember writing a couple of really silly things, and enjoying it and enjoying the process of doing that. And that coincided with this whole kind of snap where I was like, there's something going on weird here. And I started reading like voraciously. I was reading a lot of stuff. I discovered, it's funny because I've literally just been to see him speak like God knows how many years later, but I discovered writers like Bret Easton Ellis, who wrote American Psycho, and although it was Rules of Attraction, which is like a youthful college drama book. I discovered that. I discovered Woody Allen, his short stories, which were all like funny, kind of, and like Groucho Marx. So I went to like Groucho Marx and read his like collected letters, which were all really funny and silly. And I realized what that did was say, you don't have to write 1984 every time. You can write silly stuff. That kind of gave me some kind of permission in my head to be silly and write silly and think, oh, right, well, this is interesting. And then I, by chance, did like a night class at Franklin College in Grimsby, and did this like 2-hour night class on a Wednesday, and it was just to kind of go and see what was going on and go, I'm kind of doing this thing. And the tutor there, who's still a friend today, and he reads my stuff that I do now, I have a memory of him. Whether he did, I need to ask him, but he was like, you're quite good at this. What are you going to do with it? And I was like, well, nothing. I'm just kind of flitting time. I'm an auditor. I work for the council, do all this kind of stuff. And he said, well, my friend is starting a creative writing degree at Grimsby College. I think that would be I think you should do something with your writing. You've got a natural talent or whatever. I don't like saying that. I'm naturally kind of trying to be humble, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. But he definitely said, look, you're quite good at this. It would be silly not to do something with writing. And as an auditor, I was also writing reports and that. So I wasn't completely like just in numbers or anything. That I was doing writing and I could communicate effectively. So I did that. So something happened. My parents were supportive because I kind of said, I think I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go and do this degree at Grimsby College. And they straight away knew that I was going to go from like this pay grade to like minus pay grade. And not rich people or anything. But they supported me. And I did that. I quit my job, which seems like quite crazy and like quite a bold thing to do. It didn't feel like that at the time. I'm not like, wow, well done. A lot of people always say, wow, that's such a thing. But it didn't feel like that.
Yeah.
It felt quite a natural, like, oh yeah, I'm going to stop doing this. Went and did this degree. I got a job at the local cinema when it opened, the multiplex Parkway. They tried to give me a job as like a team leader at the time. They were like, I was like 5 years older than everybody else. Yeah. So there's all these like young, like 16-year-olds trying to get like a part-time job. I'm like this 20-something-year-old ex-auditor comes in going, oh, like, do you want to be a team leader? I go, no, I literally don't. I just want to turn up and fund this thing. But I did that and did the degree and was really enjoyed it, got into it kind of. I did that because I knew if I wanted to get a job as a writer, and at this point, bear in mind, writer to me was just writing book reviews for The Guardian. I assumed that was the job, or working for the Grimsby Evening Telegraph, and being a journalist ultimately, which I knew I didn't want to be. But anyway, I did that, got the first and Creative Excellence Award at the thing and all this kind of stuff, and did it really well. And I loved it because I was there. A lot of other people on the course were like, oh God, we've got to write an essay about Kafka. What? I'm like, nice one. So where I wasn't particularly like good at school and like particularly academic, now, because I couldn't be asked, I wanted to go and like skateboard down the front. Now I actually wanted to do it. So I was a lot more engaged and a lot more interested in it. So I finished that degree, and then I was met with a bit of a problem because the only kind of writing job that I knew about, because I didn't know copywriting existed, was you go and work for the Grimsby Evening Telegraph. Like, who's a writer in Grimsby? The person who writes for the Grimsby Evening Telegraph. But I didn't want to be a journalist. I knew that enough. So I knew I had to, or I thought, without insulting Grimsby, but certainly at that time, when would it have been? I don't know, early 2000s, something. Again, chronology not my strong point, but I knew I had to leave. I knew I had to. I thought about going to Manchester, and I was kind of planning on Manchester because I thought London might just be a push too far. But then it just turned out I applied for every like junior writer job I could see. Every job I applied for was going, you need 2 years experience as a writer. And I always remember on the phone to someone, I can't remember who it was, but I remember going, like at the end of my tether going, look, what are you talking about? This is the junior writer job to get the 2 years I need. And I can remember this person kind of going, yeah, you got a point there. And I was like, yeah, you're not helping. Like, how do I get a job as a writer if I've got no experience without thing? Anyway, luckily, from London, I got this job, saw this job advertised, and it was, it didn't say copywriter, I don't think. The guy who employed me eventually became like one of my first copywriting mentors. He was a crazy man. He still is a crazy man. And the job was just a bit kooky. The advert was kooky. He'd put like a fake name so that he couldn't be found on the internet and all this kind of stuff. So I'm like doing my, like, mum's telling me, do the research. And I'm like, he doesn't exist. What's going on? Had no idea what this job was going to be, but I knew it had something to do with writing. And I'd got an interview. So I was like, right, we're getting somewhere. I think he'd not asked for CV or experience. He'd only asked to write a 500-word piece selling me a suit. And I was hungover. I'll always remember I was hungover to hell, sat in the corner of my shared flat where I shared with my mate Rich. And I wrote this story about the son of God, Jesus,
Yeah.
letting you in on a fact that you might not know about, but how Jesus got his job as the Son of God. And he was a crap carpenter. I wrote this silly thing saying he's a rubbish carpenter, always messing up. But he sees a sign on the job wall in Jerusalem that says, "Come along, new job, Son of God," or whatever. He says something, he's crap in the interview, he's rubbish, but he has this beautiful suit on. And God's like, look, you're rubbish at this, but if I can have that suit, then maybe we can do a deal, kind of thing. Even at that point, Jesus is still stupid, going, no, I want to keep the suit, kind of thing. So everybody in this story is like, this suit is amazing. And then my company had descended from the person who made that suit or something like that. So it was absolute nonsense, completely not what you would do if you were trying to do a sales piece, whatever. But the guy had seen something in that, and that will form into how to write good copy at one point. But he'd seen that obviously my ability to look at something from a slightly abstract point of view, look at like the history behind that product, what makes it different, what would attract people to something in a different way than most of the other job applications, which just go, my suit's made of silk and it's really pretty and sexy and cool and what have you. I'd gone, no, I'm going to tell you a story about the suit that then you'll be interested in and emotionally engaged with. So he'd seen that, turned up to London. Turned out he worked for this company that is like this massive American and international direct response based kind of financial publishing company called Agora. How he was there, I don't know, because he's an absolute crazy guy, and most of the people are crazy in there because they understand that's where good creativity comes from. And I got the job, so I packed my bags like Dick Whittington to London and lived in squalor for at least 3 years, I think. But weirdly, I was good at writing copy, and I discovered what copywriting was. And we would write these big, long sales letters. Most people will be familiar with, like, we'll think of junk mail, like things that you get through the post. You don't really get that anymore, and most junk mail is rubbish. But the long, like 10,000 word sales letters that at the end you have to put in your credit card details and buy this piece of financial advice, whatever it is, kind of thing. And I did that and got good at it, and I enjoyed it. So I did that for probably about 10 years, worked my way up through the company, ended up running the copy team and running that department, and learned about marketing, learned about design, learned about video, learned about how to run a business, did all of these things. And I was very keen from an early stage. This mentor, the guy who employed me, I always remember he said, do you want to be a copywriter or an editor? And in that world, an editor would be someone who would do what we call content. So the like articles and opinion pieces, and the copywriter would sell those articles and opinion pieces. And I said, I don't know. So I did both for a long time, and I never stopped doing both. And then another mentor I had was from the marketing department, and I kind of added marketing to that. So I've always had like an editorial element, a copy element, marketing. And when video came in a lot more, I was very interested to understand that. Worked very closely with designers all my life. So I would literally also sit in like customer service departments, because I knew that was where the customers were that I needed to understand from a copy point of view. So I've always been interested in learning all these different elements. So I did that, and that got me running that. And then 5 years ago, how long have me and Ruth been together? About 5 years ago, I went freelance. I got to the point where I'd written the book, and got that being published by Harriman House, which kind of was giving me immediate credibility and reach. And so I moved back to Grimsby, and that was just like the nature of meeting my partner at the time. We got a dog, and then COVID kind of trapped us there for a few years, so that was a bit weird. But through that time, kind of built up, kind of found my feet as a freelancer, and that's where we are now. So, but yeah, it was basically an account. I was on one track, and then I went and kind of went down this, discovered this writing passion, I don't know, or interest, and then I've just been exploring that ever since. And all of the creative writing stuff that I did at the beginning, I kind of put that on hold. I always remember I had an opportunity to like try and go to the UEA, which is like they do like this big masters. It like got taught like people like Martin Amos and Salman Rushdie and all this stuff, and that's where you'd kind of go if you wanted to get into that. But I wasn't ready. I always remember writing a story to apply for that, and one of my tutors said it's a really good story, but like there was no need to have written this story because Paul Auster had already written it. It was an author that I really liked, and I'd emulated him to such an extent that I didn't have my own voice, and I didn't have my own experiences. I wasn't ready to write, and it's only now that I've got a bit older and possibly wiser, I don't know, or more aware of my idiocy, that I've been able to like find my own thing and come back to that, which I've been glad to do, and also now I'm starting to bring all of those disparate elements together. A lot of what I've learned creatively and a lot of my writing from a more traditionally creative angle, in the sense of like writing novels and short stories and stuff, I now realize how much leans on the copy, and I've realized also how much from copywriting you can apply to that side of things as well, which is
it's so interesting, like talking about creativity in general. Like ultimately we all as human beings absorb, you know, and as creatives as well, you absorb the things that you like or that you experience, I guess some good, some bad, but you then kind of turn that into something hopefully at least a little bit original. Sometimes it takes a long time to process that, and it's a difficult thing to do. I think it's so difficult not to emulate the people that you would look up to creatively, because
totally. And I think you need to kind of forgive yourself for that though as well. I think people like one of the best ways to learn copy is to do rote learning. So you literally copy out sales letters and copy out stuff that you've read. But I read more and more and listen to podcasts with like interviews with fiction writers and stuff, and they're all writing out like Hemingway passages and what have you that they want to do, and you realize that's how you emulating people is how you learn your skill. If you're in film, you watch Scorsese, you watch these things and you try and recreate like the round the table scene or whatever, and it's like, how do they do that? And you emulate that. But then originality and creativity, there is no really well, that's not true, but I was going to say there is no truly original thing. There is, but almost everything creatively comes from putting two ideas together and going, right, well, what if I did that, but in this way? That, and that's what your new thing is. So I think that's how you've got to go through it. But I think also there's nothing wrong with like copying people to begin with to help you find your own voice.
Yeah, I saw this thing, a little mini documentary with Johnny Marr from the Smiths, the guitarist, and he was saying in the early days that he just learned to play other people's material, which a lot of people do, you know, instrumentalists and stuff. But he said that there's such value in that, because then he learned everybody else's songwriting quirks. And that person uses that chord progression a lot in that way, that person uses these kind of melodies and things, and or song structure or rhythms, and then just taking all of that and going, well, I like that, I don't like that, I use that bit, and then you end up with something. And it's like I think it just I guess it just takes time to become more self-aware of that. And,
it never stops really. I always remember you make me think, because I'm thinking of there's so many. So I can think of, I used to play music in a band, and my mate Tom used to always say the line that he'd come with a riff, and it would be like, Tom, that's like that's a Tool riff or whatever, and he'd be like, no, I've just I'm borrowing it. I borrowed and improved it was his
Yeah.
line, and we always laughed. And I realise now there's a lot of wiseness in that. But I'm also thinking I used to love a show called Whose Line Is It Anyway? It used to be
Oh
in
yeah.
America, and they had a lot of English guests, but it was like, was it Ryan Stiles and Colin Mockery used to, I don't know if showing my age, but they were they come out and they did this thing where one of the you had like, it's like Mock the Week format where you'd get up and do this thing, and you had to like be telling a story but then like shift to a different author or what have you. And I at the time I wasn't into that stuff, but I remember even now watching it and being amazed that they'd suddenly start doing it like Hemingway, or they'd do it like F. Scott Fitzgerald, or they'd do it like Virginia Woolf, and they'd do it in that and it's now I realize, I'm like, oh wow, I was already seeing at that time that it was, they'd do it like Hemingway because he uses like a Spanish word in the middle of a sentence, and he uses a lot of ands. So as long as you say it's this and it's this, and then we went here and we did this and then we did that and that was like the emulation element. And they're doing it in a parody point of view, but you realize it's because they're all creative people, and that's how everybody learns.
Yeah.
You just create, you parody and parody. And even now we'll look at part of what me and Nick do with The Fix is rather than just being preachy and saying, here's what you should do, here's the 10 ways of doing this, or like why you should use storytelling in your copy or whatever, we have changed it. So we will say, give us your copy and let's review it. Let's have a look at these elements of what we're doing. But what we'll do, one of the things we do is look at copy, look at what's working. So if you're a company and you're going, we really need to be that company, look at their copy, emulate it, figure out what, now don't publish the stuff that you're emulating, but look at it, study it, understand what makes this good. Why is this good? Is it because of the headline? Is it because of the style? Is it the tone of voice? What is the good things that I like about this? And then you go, right, well, I'd like to take that to our thing. So now how can I shift that to like look at the way we talk, and add that together? It never stops. Like it really, like no matter how good you get at anything, you have to keep like emulating in private almost, which sounds like a strange just to quote that, emulating in private. But
no, that's interesting though. So because it leads me on to something that I wanted to talk about later, but obviously it kind of makes sense to mention it now. But so when you're creating copy for a brand, they have their voice and their brand, which is some, we know working with businesses that some of them know their brand very well, and some are maybe not quite sure on certain things. But how much of your voice that you've developed over these years that you've been talking about, how much of that do you think you do put into that, or that people maybe should put into that, and how much is it sort of emulating that brand's, what they've done previous and who they are? Is it a difficult balance?
I don't think it's a difficult balance. I think it's an interesting, I'm really interested by tone of, what we're talking about here is really like tone of voice. And I'm really interested by this idea to the point where I can get too philosophical on it. And I've not fully thought out my thinking yet. But the reason I say that is because I question sometimes how much tone of voice matters to a company. Now that's quite like contrary to what a lot of people say. And me personally, I will do tone of voice stuff with brands and trying to. But I'm really interested in, I don't think it's the main priority. And I don't think it's the best way of structuring the thoughts around how to best sell your business. The reason for that is something probably everybody's seen is the brand Innocent. It's usually held up as like the tone of voice. It's the last big tone of voice like success, when it was like oh right, there's this new smoothie company and they do this and it's innocent and it's all kind of a bit quirky and they sell little hats on the bottles and all this kind of stuff. The guy who actually invented that like despises everything he did for it because it's been like taken on board by every company. And now when you get a tone of voice document or whatever, they'll say, do it. We want to be quirky, a bit off, bit thingy, but professional, but thingy. And it's like, you just want to be everything. And they ultimately just say, we want to be like innocent kind of thing. And I work with across a lot of brands, a lot of industries, and we're going from like more industries than you could imagine, from financial stuff to like property to health to all these things. All of the tone of voice documents ultimately say quirky, but not too quirky, professional. Like one thing I've noticed people saying, we talk with brevity, and it's like, that's not tone of voice, that's sentence structure. Like I can see that whoever's charged you to do this has kind of ripped you off, because it's like, that's not anything to do. Everybody talks in a version of clip sentences, long sentences and thing, and that's just how you tell it. It's not tone of voice. But all of that thing has diluted the world of tone of voice. And you're speaking about, does my tone of voice come, like how do I balance that? As a creative writer, I'm trying to find a tone of voice in my novel so you can kind of sense it. But actually all of this boils down to the ultimate answer to all questions on everything, but specifically tone of voice. It depends. And it depends on how well defined, or how self-aware a company is about itself. If they truly have done the work and know who they are and what they are, then they will use certain language tropes, they will use certain words, they'll have a vibe, for want of a better word, that you can straight away see. And then my job as copywriter is just to go, all right, yeah, I've got, like, there's a few shorthand things I can do to emulate that in the copy and identify that. But ultimately, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think a lot of it comes down, if the company understands who it is, what it wants to achieve, and that's not from like a sustainable, proud kind of like purpose-driven marketing thing, but genuinely, if like, no, we're this, and we don't like, we want to be like this, we want to achieve this, we want to do that, we want to be seen as this, that stuff will come across in not how you speak, but in the way you speak, in the marketing that you do, in the content that you provide, in the products that you sell. And I think that is the priority. Now I realize I'm like sign-lined in a copywriter, but I think for me as a copywriter, I can't, if I'm hired to like write copy and they go, oh, we want some tone of voice stuff, and I'm like, you don't need, that's not what you want, you need this or this kind of thing. I see it as a role of mine to like try and guide a company to where it actually wants to be. But I just think tone of voice is a very dangerous world to get too hung up on until you've done that first work. Once you've got that, then you can start figuring out like, okay, well, we want to be quirky, we want to be a bit thing, but what does that, I think the question is to say, why do you want to be like that? And I guess what I'm saying is, like, not all companies are quirky, fun like thing. That's not going to make you stand out in the market. There are going to be companies out there who are dry as hell and are boring and very process driven and thing. But that's not a bad thing. That means they're reliable. That means you can trust them. You know that they're there. I don't want a quirky bank. Like, I love Richard Ayoade. I think he's one of the funniest blokes alive. But do I want him as the face of HSBC, being my bank and being quirky, going, it's like, that's my money. Like, don't muck around with my money. Like, that's, if anything, I want quite a boring, trustworthy tone of voice. I certainly don't want people playing football down the road and then coming into the Halifax. Banking industry copy is one of the worst in the world. There's probably reasons for that, but anyway. But that for me is where, if you truly understand, go, all right, what are the benefits of these tones that I'm trying, like we say, oh, well, we want to be quirky, but why? What does that show you? Is that appropriate for your business? Like the work needs to be done there. The actual copy, that's like, I always say it's the easy bit. Like there's just words, there's language, the sentence structure, there's simply length and like how it looks. Like you can manipulate all of that stuff after the effect. But I think it comes down to truly doing the work early on in understanding who you really want to be and being honest with yourself as well. Don't just say, oh no, we want to be quirky because that's what everybody else is being. It's like, no, actually, I hate quirkiness. I hate those people being like that. It's like, right, you've just identified a passion of yours. Lean into that kind of thing, which I think is more important. It poses a challenge from a copywriting perspective because so much of it gets lumped in with the writing bit of the title of copywriter. And it's very hard to like charge for that kind of thing. But I do believe you will end up writing better copy if you focus more on who the businesses are and don't so much think of tone of voice, but think of, it's almost like, rather than the voice, it's like the tone of the company. That's ridiculous and not I thought it might be quite inventive when I said that in my mind 3 seconds before I said it. But I just think doing that work, it's not on the page, that work, it's in person, it's understanding the company, it's asking questions and researching and figuring out what sets you apart. And it's not just in the way you speak, it is the way you act. I think. But it's a long rambling answer for something. It's a hard one. I think you could explore that for a long, long time. But
yeah, it kind of leads me on to the next thing, that there must be, what you said there is kind of one of the points, I guess, that there must be things that businesses, organisations, brands do quite often, maybe things that they don't get right quite often that you see. I guess one of them is maybe trying to be all things all at once.
I think imitating other people is a massive error. I understand why it happens. When a CEO or an accountant or whoever's the manager, the head of whatever, who's been out of the kind of trenches for so long, they see that works. How do we do that? We want to do that again, or imitate that, and then you end up with a pale imitation of that. But for a while it will work. I always remember we did a lot of. I'm involved in a lot of email marketing, and if you sell something on a Monday and you sell 10. If you send out exactly the same email on the next day, you will almost certainly sell 5. And if you do it on the next day, you will almost certainly sell 2.5, and it will just half every day with the same message. That's how selling works. And it will just naturally, and you can run businesses like that. As long as you know when it stops and gets to 0, you then do a new thing and what have you. But the really good businesses, the really successful people in the world, are constantly looking for ways to reinvent. My advice generally would be to have your repeating business there, but give enough time to looking for ways of reinventing, shooting for a 10, like trying to be different, trying to be weird, and figuring stuff out. So most of the advertising I see, and I think we all see, I was on holiday this weekend with my parents, and we're sat there kind of watching the adverts between whatever longer advert that is on these days. We were watching Love Island. I don't know why. I don't like these things, but that's just one big long advert as far as I'm concerned. But the adverts between, and my dad's going, oh, I don't like that one, don't like this one, blah, blah. And boring me is going, well, actually, I know the person who wrote that, and they did it for this reason. That's what they're trying to do. And I can see all the science behind it. But I'm like, well, they failed because normal customer is sat there going, what? I don't care what's going on. I see the world of advertising through the awards and all the kind of, getting yourself on the campaign magazines and being the ad of the day and all this kind of stuff. And I understand that then makes you seem like you're the most successful. But often the most successful is the one that says 15 quid, 2 cases of lager, 15 quid here, get there. And everybody goes, right, we're off there. That's the piece of copy that beats the sat on the beach like following the San Miguel bottle through the air and all this kind of stuff. So but mostly it's imitation is the error. I think people are not brave enough to try new stuff and be willing to fail. We live in we've got hard again, I think, on people failing, and like everybody's scared to fail and like get stuff wrong and go, oh, I've done right. These days we've got, without getting too political or sociological, but like you've got the whole cancel culture. That's what that is. It's I say something, I don't agree with you, get out. And it's the same mindset of, all right, that advert's failed, never do that again. It's like, no, but it might just be the wrong time to try that advert, or you might have got that bit wrong. But people would naturally go for the average and the safe. Well, that worked for them. Let's do another version of that. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest biggest challenge in advertising. I get it. It's a business thing, and it's very brave to be able to say, let's try something different. Let's see if this fails. But that's where I think it's old hat advice, but like that ability to fail and fail fast. Like to quickly go, that didn't work, move on.
Yeah.
No one's fault. Like, if anything, I'd put more money on the person who would wrote the failed ad than the one who's writing the consecutively half successful ones, because that person who's failed is going to go, right, I failed. Okay, I'll try something new. I'll try this. I'll try that, and do that kind of thing. So I think being open to that and going, okay, we'll try that. It doesn't matter if it goes wrong, as long as you're not doing anything ridiculously like offensive or anything. But if that don't spend loads of money on it. Someone the other day, I can remember, asked me for a job and said, oh, I'd like to do some copy. And I said, okay, cool. Had a conversation with them, figured out what they need, and they're like, okay, I'm expensive. So they were like, I could tell her, like, okay, well, we can't quite afford that yet. So what we're going to do is test this marketing stuff first. And I thought, okay. And I felt kind of bad because I thought, what you're going to test is a load of failing copy. So all of your marketing results are not going to be based on anything. And you'll have to contact me again, having spent all of that money and done all of that marketing, only to find out that you didn't have a message that works. I think what people should do is never boost a post on Facebook, never do any paid advertising until you have figured out in some way something that works. There are always ways to do that. You can split test. If you've got a little email list, just look for clues, get 5 people in the office and just try different ideas. Don't assume that and this is slightly rambling onto another thing, but a good piece of advice when it comes to that, how do you fail? How do you identify what's working? Test stuff to other people before you go out, and don't assume that your first idea, your first iteration is the best one. Like, even if it's good and you think, oh, this is pretty good, go, okay, that's pretty good, but like, is there a better way we can do this? What if we did something completely different? What would that look like? And try and do that. So like, I'll write a good headline because I'm pretty good at doing that, but then I'll go and have a coffee and I'll come back and I'll try and write 10 completely different ones to go, right, well, what if I actually did that? And then I'll delete them all and I'll think, right, what do I remember of all that kind of stuff? And that's just my personal process for doing it. But just always be thinking, what if I try something different? So much advertising and copy and content and blogs and all this stuff, it's just all homogenized. It all looks the same. And it's like the car advert joke where it's a car advert because there's a puma running through the hills and the thing. It's a car, so you're going, which car? It would be better if at the end of that it said Weetabix. And you go, oh, right, okay, what? That's made me think of Weetabix kind of thing. I'm not saying do that, but that's just a parody on that. But that whole imitation, it will kill you, and it will mean you end up spending a lot more on marketing and advertising than you get your back up, because you end up spending a load of stuff for a copywriter to come in, and you think, well, I can write, and it's like, yeah, but you didn't do the thinking that goes with the writing, and that's the problem. But
a lot of what you said kind of makes me think it's important to be a little bit brave and a little bit bold with the things that you put out. So you, like you say, you're not imitating a million other things that's been done before that maybe was right for a different brand. It's kind of figuring out what the essence of who you are and
It
getting
is,
that
yeah.
across.
Just when it comes to copy, I kind of always say there's two places you can go. So the natural extent, I always find it always comes down where do you get the ideas to be creative and to do things and to try different things. So this kind of leads into that as well. But you get ideas from two places. You get it from the product, i.e. the thing you're selling, or the company or what have you, or you get it from the people who are consuming that product. So they're the only two places you need to go to find ideas. And you can spend days and weeks on both of those areas. So if you're in the product, if you're in the company, you figure out what is it that makes that company, that product, that thing interesting. Like go to the absolute nth degree. We were just talking here about yourself. You are now in a room where there used to be a nightclub underneath you, and there used to be a glass floor here that you could see the nightclub, and you still got DJ elements and stuff. That to me is a place where you'd start going, okay, well, write that down, because it might come to nothing, but that starts bringing uniqueness and
like building their personality.
It's like, right, okay, well, that's something to do with us and what have you. And okay, it might be nothing, but it builds the picture. And you just keep asking why and why and why. I always cite a friend I work with in London. He now runs that business in Australia. And he's one of the smartest idiots I've ever come across. And I say that he's one of my best friends, but he imitates being an idiot to a degree where you'd think the man was an idiot. He's not. He's incredibly smart. But the reason he does that, he'd get in a room and he'd go, we were interviewing someone who we were going to sell a product for, and he'd be going, why? And the person would go, oh, because people need mops. And you go, but why? And you go, well, because people need to clean their floors. I did the mopping yesterday, that's why mops is in my head. But I go, well, why? You go, because you don't want bacteria growing on the floor. And you go, but why? And you go, because then you'll die if you get that bacteria. And you go, why? And you go, because your body can't. Or you'd stop at a bit and go, what do you mean you need bacteria because you'll die? Right, so this is like life and death. This mop is the difference between life and death for you. And that starts unlocking things that you wouldn't have thought about if you'd just gone, oh, it's a Vileda mop. We need to clean sparkly floors. It's like this is the mop. Then you'd go, oh, right, life and death. Right, let's do a film where we're stopping tigers with the mop and all this kind of. Immediately ideas start bumping around because you just kept going, why to the product. To the point where usually you'll find the product owner will go, because I like this thing. And you go, thank you, you've just given me my next sales piece. Because as soon as they give passion and emotion, you're like, right, that's where we should be going. So you do that with the product. And the same with people. Where are people? What do they, why would they buy this? What are they seeing? What do they care? Why does it matter to them? What do they want? And you just keep asking why and digging deeper and deeper and just writing all of this stuff down. And it's like the most boring thing, but it's the best piece of advice you can give to figure out how to sell your stuff, because the answers are all there. It's just that people don't spend long enough or go deep enough to figure that out. When you've got glass floor, equipment, blah blah, and you've got all these little things, you'll go, oh wait there, what if I did that and that and that, and it will do it for you. I believe it will. I might be some kind of magical wizard who can do all this. I don't believe I'm not. I'm like a very normal, not particularly bright or super intelligent person. I've just learned a few processes and tricks that I can go, all right, if I do that, that will do the maths for me. Then you get stronger at doing it, and you can do it more inherently. And I don't need to go that far because I can just figure out where we're going, kind of thing. But you can recreate that. It just takes time. But I guess that's hard, giving yourself time.
Yeah, no, it's interesting though, because I think that process would work for us with filmmaking, because we'll go to a client, similar to what you do, where you'll ask loads of questions, but I think sometimes those questions this is me just kind of being almost critical of thinking how we can improve our own process, but it's those questions are often based on they're quite generic. So it'll be, you know, why do you want to make this video? What do you want it to do? Blah blah blah. Where's it going? How long? Have you seen other things that you like? What? But I think if we just did that, where it's why do you want?
Yeah, I mean,
why,
don't
why,
get me
why?
wrong.
I think
I'd like to
dig a bit deeper.
Yeah, I think my gut feeling is that I think you would end up in a good place. But I'm also I get fed up with a lot of advice out there is like just it's kind of from either people in positions that they haven't used that advice for God knows how long, and they're just rich and what have you, and it's like, oh yeah, you can read 20 books a day by just like eating the corner of the page each, and it's like, what, this is not useful to me. And I also get like just theorized advice. I don't like that. The LinkedIn, and especially in our copywriting and advertising world, it's absolutely, it's a terrible quagmire of stuff there.
When you say theorize, sorry, do you mean people who've maybe not done that? Or
Yeah,
just...
a bit of like not got the experience of done it, or of read it in my book and then just said the same thing. And it's like, don't get me wrong, there's nice ways of doing that, but it's like, you've not kind of, not earned, it sounds like kind of a bit arrogant on my part, but like, is it what you've figured out yourself? Can you fully corroborate that information? And I think you only when you do it and then go, oh, actually, you don't need that bit, or I don't think you do, and then you might bring your own spin on it, and that's interesting. I always say to like young copywriters who are starting out, do not set up your website pretending to be like Glenn Fisher, like 15 years experience copywriter. Start your website going, I'm a copywriter and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm now leaning in to find out what's going on. I want to go on your journey with you. It sounds like through the keyhole, who do you think you are? But I do want to go like, all right, that sounds interesting. And then you've got a blog for life saying, today I learned what this means. I thought that was cool, but I've been thinking about it and I think this. And you're like, right, now, this is an authoritative voice coming through that's learning for itself. So that's what I mean by all that kind of advice. That was a long way of that. I like to also be practical, and I think realistically, you're on a shoot, you've got this thing, you've got a new client. A lot of clients, the world that they're in, if I walk in, Che Guevara revolutionized the way we're going to do this, you're going to be, whoa. Like, I do not want to be doing that. Like, that sounds risky. I don't want to take any risk. I want to copy that advert that worked, that I know I'm going to get my sales at the end of it. If I come and go, if we all get in a room and turn off the lights and just scream the words that we want to say, we're going to write a great advert. No, I don't want to get involved with that. It sounds weird. Someone else can get involved with that, and then I'll just copy them once it's successful. I get it. So, like, I would say, do the standard route, but it depends where you are in life. As a private, like as a freelancer, if you want to do this, or as a company, where you are. But I would just say, give a little investment time to go to doing the weird and to trying that as well. It might not work, and it might, in the long run, take you a little bit longer because you're doing both. You're doing the practical. Why do you want to do this? Because we want to show that we're a luxury thing and all this. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to touch on that. But what if we did just a little test, and then if we can maybe try and like rationalize and read, like get that out there, and you'll probably see that it's good. A good book to read if people, I don't like advising books about copy and marketing because most of them are rubbish, and also you won't learn anything from them. But Alchemy, a book called Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, who's like a famous, he works for Ogilvy, but he's behind a lot of stuff. That explains in very good terms the idea of emulating other adverts and why people do it, and why it's completely understandable, but why you ain't ever going to be leading the market doing that kind of thing. If you really want to get breakthrough stuff, you've got to zig when everybody zags and all that kind of generic advice. But it's hard. It's being brave to do that. I understand, and I sympathize with business owners to do the hard stuff. The fix, for all intents and purposes, is mine and Nick's business. Are we the most out there? Like, I don't know. We follow a lot of like staid routes. We do try and riff and go, okay, why don't we do this differently? We're writing a book together at the moment, and we are writing it in a different way. than you would normally do, because we want to embody the difference ourselves in the way we create a thing that will ultimately be about creativity. So we want to be a bit weird with it. So we do try and live our advice, if that makes sense. But it's hard, and I don't envy like business owners trying to battle in that world, but I would try and find people, if you can, who will give you the confidence and like give you the confidence and like reassurance to like be a bit weird. Once you've got a good relationship, I know like you guys, you've got good relationships with like various clients. I think if they saw this and then went, can you like try the weird, like once you've got a good relationship, just go, yeah, let's try a little bit of weird like today. Let's see if we can think. We can do the normal, we can get that. So it's going to be quality and it's going to be good. But what if we did that? Like what if is one of our biggest, the way we do peer reviews on copywriting. We try and, if you only show someone something and then go, I don't like that bit, that's deconstructed, it's not helpful, it's just critical. So whenever we do peer reviews with people, you're only allowed to voice your thoughts on a piece of copy if you can give an alternative. So you would, if the copy went, Luke is a lovely man, and you go, I don't really like that, you'd have to say, what if it said, Luke is one of the finest gentlemen of the world? And you go, yeah, I like that better. That's better. We'll do that. But I can't just go, I don't like it, because that's no good to anyone.
Yeah.
So that idea of the what if theory of just going, well, what if it said this? It gets other people thinking like that. So I think if you can create a creative relationship with the team, it might be a copywriter involved, it might be a designer, it might be a film person, it might be the accountant, it might be the thing. Give everybody the permission to be on an equally creative footing. And the way you do that is you just say, well, no one's allowed to just say, I don't like it. Even the big boss man, everyone's got to say, well, what if it said this? And then you start to fight to try and express what you're going to say. But that for me, all of this is ultimately all in the same environment of how do you be different? How do you stand out? How do you do it? And it is by being willing to fail, being willing to experiment. And how do you do that? You have to be in it's a bad phrase, but like a safe space where, you know, like if I say this idea, when I say it and you go, that's a bit weird, you don't then think I'm a weirdo. It's not personally against me. It's just that idea is weird. Okay, let's put that in the bin. Let's have a look at this one. It's not me who's strange. It's just that idea is strange. That's okay. Let's get rid of it. Anyone else got any ideas? And it takes a long time to get to that. That's hard. Or having the confidence to like go, what if we said this? But you should, as much as possible, not just copywriters, everyone in the room, like the quicker you learn to be brave in that, so the more value you will bring to whatever business you're in, whatever you do, to be able to throw ideas around and be giving with those ideas is, I think, one of the best skills anybody can have, kind of thing. It's the same as like, don't go in a meeting without and not say anything. It's like, be willing to get out there.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
So if you were to kind of summarize maybe some sort of tips for businesses, brands, that how to effectively communicate, do you think you could kind of boil that down into a few?
There's three things. No, I don't know. There's a million and one things, but I would say you need to figure out who you are and why you operate. But flashing warning in my head now is all the kind of stuff where we went through a phase of this maybe 10 or 20 years ago. We still see remnants of it and still people do it now, but I'm not talking about like vision and strategy and all that kind of silly thing where you get in a room and do all that stuff. But in an authentic and open way, you need to say, well, what do we want to do? Like, how do we figure this out? And I would spend time doing that. I would spend as much time thinking about stuff, whether this is more general, but it is to like a brand thing. spend as much time thinking as you do writing. The writing bit will come secondary, because you can ultimately, if you spend long enough thinking about it, but also record those sessions possibly, or have someone there who can record them, in the sense that if I was in the room, I could be the recorder of that. If you've got like film cameras on, you might be more conscious about speaking and what have you, and everybody kind of acts up. But have someone who can record it, because chances are the stuff you say in that will be your copy, like, or will need minor finessing kind of thing. Every client I work with, I'll just go and speak to them, and I'll record it in some way, whether that's in my brain or literally recording it on a mic. And the key phrases, we spoke about tone of voice earlier on, all of that stuff, it comes from the company. Like, you very rarely have to add those words to the company. That doesn't make any sense, that your tone of voice would involve words that you've never said before. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So that you have all of the words that you need in your company, but you might need an interpreter, in the sense of copywriting, coming in and going, all right, you say this a lot, you speak like this, you do that. So have someone there to record it, or record it yourself if you want to do it on a budget. So spend the time thinking, spend the time. When it comes to communicating, clarity is the key thing. You need to speak clearly before being clever. Don't get me wrong, if you can pay enough money and get things, being clever and getting the wordplay and getting all that kind of stuff is cool, and that will give you a little bit more edge in the market. But more than anything, being clear, not trying to be too clever is number one rule. And the way you do that is not to try and be clever. Like, just communicate what you want. Start with what you want. Copywriting is a slight misnomer in that we have the writing word in there. Most of it, like I'll say, if you're pitching an idea to me, don't write it down. Just tell me, what are you doing? What are you selling? And go, we're trying to do thing. It's like, no, just tell me, what is it that you're doing? You go, oh, well, we're trying to sell X in this market. And you go, okay, why would I buy that? And they go, well, because of this. And it goes back to that why thing. Just try and get it in very human terms and write that down, and then look at that and go, oh, actually, that's not too bad an advert, actually. Now we can move that around and delete that and move that, but that's the core of your thing. Just how would you communicate in a very clear way? To borrow from my novelistic and creative writing training, there's about 1 million like quotes that support this, but Kurt Vonnegut, who's a great novelist, he always said, if you can't explain your novel in a single line to like a 14-year-old, you've not got a good idea, kind of thing. And it works in that you need to be able to boil your offering down to a single line where you go, it's this, so that you can do this. We all watch Dragon's Den and stuff like this when there's people fumbling over how to say. The ones that work are the ones who come and go, hi there, you have a problem, here's my solution. Like, there's more ways to sell than problem solution, but that is a great start. Most people like try and start over here, and it's like, no. What is the problem and solution? Like, what's the promise you're making? What's going on? Just really basic, and try and speak with clarity. So if you think about things, so figure out who you are, what you're trying to do, and why. Write all that down, record it, get it on paper so you can see it and have it visually there. Then, as I say, do the work of like trying to think about that for a while. What does that mean? Like, throw those ideas out. And then when you start to come in to express it, just start very basically and do it aloud. Like, I haven't spoken about reading copy aloud. In the actual process of writing, there's editing stuff you can do that makes things really simple and easy. But start in a space where you're speaking things aloud, because it slows your thought down. It makes you think, right, okay, this is how I say that. This is how we communicate. This is how we talk. I start using language that I would use naturally, rather than the fake language of how most people are programmed to write, which is school essay and like blah, 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 and like CV language, where it's like, my hobbies are socializing and seeing people on Facebook. And it's like, what the, like, no one speaks like that for a start. No one does that. What you want about? It's learning to speak, learning to recognize how you speak and then translating that to a more naturalistic way of writing. But the easiest way to do that is just to speak it aloud and record that and then go, okay, right, now I can finesse that stuff. So think about clarity. And then when it gets to ideas, try and, I'll credit this to Nick because he always says it more than me, but when you're coming up with ideas and thinking about it, try and shoot for a 10. So most ideas are like, yeah, that's okay, that's cool. Like you shoot for it. Like, what is the craziest thing I can say? I might completely miss it and get a 0, but I'll try and get for the crazy weird idea and go for that. It's better to do that as much as possible than just go, well, that's okay. That's not a bad idea. That'll do. That looks like it should look. That will probably do something. Have some of them. That's like business day to day, getting your stuff out. I get it. Like it's a thing, but at least spend a little bit of time, as I say, like just saying, well, what if we shot for what if we did something really crazy here? What if that, and that ultimately I think is where you'll find your breakthrough ideas and your really good stuff that will set you aside and make people stop in the tracks and go, oh, right, okay, cool. That's interesting. I guess in a one way you could think that day to day and that's okay. That's almost like where the world of branding and like you've got your core stuff like that should be good as well, but just how can I like make people like go, oh, what, like that's interesting, and lean into it. I think that's spend more time doing that, and this is me bitching, but be aware that that is as valuable as 25 word documents that the copyright like give. If you can't do it yourself, if you don't want to do it yourself, if you haven't got time to do it yourself, pay someone to think for you and pay a creator. That's why give someone creative the time to breathe, and you'll be surprised by what you get back. One of my friends employed me early on when I was still like trying to figure out the whole freelance gig thing, and he just was like, yeah, just give us some ideas. And I was like, no, but what you need like loads of stuff. And he was like, no, just a couple of lines up there. And it twisted my mind up to such an extent that I ended up giving loads of stuff. But what I realized was, oh no, you are paying me to think. Like that's valuable. So it's bitchy from my own point of view and trying to give myself like space. But honestly, if you give creative people the time and give as much value to that as you give to tangible things, you will succeed. And as a brand, as a company, you will have the edge over other people, because that's the bit that no one's willing to do. No one's willing to give the time to actually go, okay, well, let's have a day and like let's shoot for 10 today. Let's like, what's the different way of doing this? Because it's just easier to get it out there and get the churn. But everybody, I'm almost guarantee anybody watching this will recognize that churn mentality of like, we've got to get this done, we've got to get this out. It's always last week, it's that churny. It's like, okay, we've launched that, we've done it, cool, what now? Oh, shit, we've got to do it again, kind of thing. And it's that churn mentality. If you want to escape that, it's very hard, but you almost need to just turn off and go, right, now let's go for some massive ideas that will change the market and change things. That's I think the fastest way to achieve that is stopping giving everybody time to think. But it's hard, and I understand that.
So it's almost taking the time and energy and failing a few times at a really something that's bold and more original and more interesting. So you might fail 3 times, but then hit a big win.
Totally.
As opposed to just getting many very small wins.
Yeah, you need both. And that's business. But don't if with anything in life, it's balance. As you learn in every department of your life, it's always balance. But you need. But if you only do the thing, you will only go like that. If you only do the standard stuff, and you might be happy with that. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not judging if that's the thing and you're doing a good business and that's cool, and you don't like stress and or whatever you like, that's fine. But the game changes, the business changes, the steps. I always remember I worked closely with a magazine, a financial magazine, big, like the number one financial magazine in the UK kind of thing, and used to look at the reader numbers, and it was literally a graph like the step graph, and that you could see where it'd go along, and then it'd jump up, and then it'd plateau, and it'd jump up, and it'd plateau, and it was like for all sales techniques or whatever, and every single little step was either technological change, so like the introduction of, say, a Facebook advert thing, so when everybody could then do that, you got a but. So it was either a technological change like that, or it was with a breakthrough promotion that changed everything, a piece of copy that went boom, and like an out there idea that changed it and moved it up a level. So you can go like that, and you need that to maintain your business. But to get those jumps, which are hard to go for and scary, and it's brave to do it, but you need out there thinking for that. And to do that, you need to be willing to fail, and you need to be willing to get it wrong. And yet you get 1 in 10 that hit. And that's for the first 9 that don't, you're going to be getting pretty sweaty and be like, oh God, this didn't work kind of thing, like what have you. But if you don't do that, it's just the same. So I guess it's there's probably like an analogy for like a hare and a tortoise or something like that. It's somewhere along that line. But you want to be like the hare and the tortoise story doesn't make sense unless there's a hare and a tortoise. You need a bit of both.
Yeah.
That's probably taking the analogy too far. But yeah, I would try and maybe do like 80-20. So 80 standard stuff, but just give a little bit over to that crazy thinking and like going for the big hit and be willing to fail and give everybody permission. Don't expect anything from it. Don't budget on that. Budget on the everyday business and what have you. But yeah, if you want to change, I think you need to do that.
It makes me just kind of going on to a different subject, but a lot of what you've talked about is finding that differentiation, and it makes me think of recent trends I've seen across kind of art, music and copywriting and other things, the use of AI and the introduction of AI and automation, and in a lot of cases anyway, it's kind of stripping away that value, that kind of human thing that goes into it to make it engaging to other humans.
Yeah, I think so. I don't have a problem with AI, said the man who clearly has a problem with AI, to phrase the sentence like that. But I don't really think about it. I'm forced to, because I see it is a big thing at the moment, and especially in the copywriting world. Copywriters have interpreted it as a replacement for copywriters. We don't need it if it can emulate a piece of copy and recreate a new, fresh piece. Cool. Why the hell are we paying someone to sit there and write this stuff? And there's massive discussions we have with the Fix. We have a members group where we have a Discord channel where everybody's talking, and everybody's talking on it and speaking in there about AI. And there's two sides. Well, the pros I've heard to it is that AI being able to write for you will allow you to get stuff done quicker, and that's great and like cool. Yeah, actually, as a copywriter, if I can like kind of maybe get that to write it for me and then edit it and make sure it's cool and then send it on, I've now got a second hand doing that thing. It's not how I personally will work, and I'm probably now too old to like move that kind of is the thing. I could see that being a thing in the future. That scares me, and it's the same reason my granddad don't quite know how to use his Samsung tablet, and I can kind of, but my younger brother can do whatever with it. It's just how it works along the technological span. For me, though, I've never really had a big problem with AI versus copywriting, for the very reason you say, is that the one thing I think it misses, or will at least miss for my lifetime, God knows where the technological wizardry will get eventually. But I think without that humanistic element to dig and to connect things randomly and to make random connections and things that don't seem to make sense and don't follow a logical pattern. I'm big into logic, like I'm too logical, and in my life I need to be more emotional kind of thing. But at the same time, the best ideas, the best things that I do are always the most illogical and random and emotionally led things. I don't think AI can do that yet. Maybe it can, I don't know. I'm sure some California scientists who's big on it will tell me different, but I don't think that's there. And I think that whole danger is that it seems it's very attractive. So I keep talking about this kind of dual thread of the standard business, everyday ideas and what have you that you need versus that 1 in 10 that change things. But the truth is that standard business thing can be attractive. Like that can pay the bills, that can take you on holiday, that can do all that stuff. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's only if you want to try and level that up a little bit and maybe lift that to a higher level of normal kind of level thing that becomes a problem. I feel like the AI stuff and all that is in that world. It's in that homogenized world. It's in that everything's there. And that it's attractive. Yeah, that you could spend a lot of time and do a lot of things. It's marginally increasing that band. I'm doing a very visual thing, but imagine if it's going along. You can probably just heighten it a little bit, tiny bits, by being more efficient, by using things like AI, by doing that kind of stuff. Can I be asked? Do I love that? Does that fulfill me emotionally? Do I think not really, not me personally? So that I'm not kind of interested in that. And I think certainly from a copywriting point of view, I think it's a distraction. I think it's a shiny object that promises to do the bits that are hard, but I don't know whether it can actually do that. And I barely trust me to go and do your copy and shoot for 10. Do I trust an algorithm to go and do that? No, I certainly don't, because they don't even understand that abstract concept of like trying something crazy. So it doesn't excite me in the same way it excites some people. Like one of the copy writers I work with, he loves it. He thinks it's great. He's like really excited by it and really like engaged by it. And that's great. But like a lot of people like Harry Potter, but I don't. So it's like, that's fine. Like, cool. There'll be a world. There's enough of the world where both of those things, like both of those positions, can be held. So I'm not. I don't think AI is dangerous or anything, which is like the other thing. I think it's the reason anybody will take anything from this conversation with me as a copywriter, so any business owner or anything, will because they'll go, oh, that's quite interesting. I've not thought about it that way. I don't think AI does that stuff. And I think I think that's dangerous because it promises that to a business owner, here's something new you can try that's easy. Whereas stuff I'm saying is probably like, I'm basically saying you need to fail loads and like put more time into something. It's like, no, that sounds expensive. That sounds bothersome. Yeah. That sounds stressful. I'm not going to do that, Glenn. This AI thing's promising I can do this more efficiently and save me some cost. I'll go with that first. Cheers. And then I mark my words, in 5 years' time, there'll be something else to replace that kind of thing. Let's all spend all our time doing SEO. Let's spend all our time doing Facebook ads. Let's all go on to TikTok now. Let's all go on to these things. They're all platforms and mechanisms to give you a little tiny imitation of a boost and kind of give you something new to look at and go, all right, yeah, that has undoubtedly done stuff for that business, but I almost guarantee that was the first mover in that space that it's done the best thing for. And that's what I'm talking about. It's the first mover who goes, oh no, I've shot for 10 and I've done this crazy thing. Oh, I've invented TikTok. Oh wow, like, oh, I've gone on TikTok when there's no one on there. Now there's millions of people following me.
Yeah.
Because you did the brave thing first. By the time we know about it, it's too late.
Yeah.
I can't launch a TikTok. My TikTok career is too late unless I did something extreme. But like, I think that's the same kind of mindset that I'm talking about, is that you need to be the first mover on these things. You need your business line, but then if you want to change it to be the first mover, you have to be thinking outside the box and you have to be doing that thing. It's not as scary and crazy and impossible. The mindset is always, oh, well, I'm not like that. No, you just need a little bit of time and you might go, oh, right, thing. And the more people you surround yourself with who are willing to dare and willing to try different things, the more chance you might be able to do something really new.
Yeah.
And rather than be an imitation of the innocent tone of voice, you create your own, you do this thing, rather than going, oh, AI. It's like, I've been doing AI for years. Like, what are you on about? Like, yeah, didn't you know this kind of thing? So it does all tie together, I think. In a thing.
What kind of things? Because obviously, I kind of got from the conversation. Then your AI is not. It's interesting to you, but it's not kind of inspiring. But what things do inspire you? What things do you want to see more of in the world of copy, or just generally with how brands communicate?
It's you mentioned this before, and like, inspiration is like a strange thing, because I never think too much about what inspires me, but I am an inspired person. I do find things interesting and get excited by stuff. In the world of copy, and the reason I kind of laughed, because I thought I don't take a massive I'm always watching copy. I'm always watching adverts and like just clocking them and going, all right, you've done that. That's how you've done that. That's there. And I'm inputting that. But I have friends, very successful people in the industry, people like a lady called Vicky Ross, who I know she's like obsessed with like looking at adverts and loving that kind of stuff, and like gets really like pumped by it, and it's great, and it's like that's inspiring itself. But for me, I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, well, you've done this, and yeah, that's fine. I'm much more inspired by pretentious warning, but I'm going to say ideas. And what I mean by that, to give an example, is the thing that's flashing in my head now. I've just read a book called Diego Garcia, and I can't remember the two authors, because it's by two people, a man and a woman, and I want to say Natasha, but I don't think it is. But it's published by a little kind of imprint of a bigger thing called Fitzcarraldo Editions. But it's a book that's written by two people. It's like a collaborative thing. It's a piece of fiction, but it's not. It's got like their life in it. But it's also about this little island called Diego Garcia in the British Indian Ocean that we sold to America, and it's like politically fragile, and we like threw out everybody who lived on this island, and it's horrible. Like, there's some really weird, and it's all this kind of stuff, but it's all about creativity. It's about who can write who. I read that book and I was like, what the, like, wow, like that's wow, like that's inspired me, and it inspired me in a way that I went, how can I be as inventive as that? And so I was only inspired to be inventive, and then I looked at the novel I'm working on, going, can I emulate that? Can I nick that? And I was like, no, I can't. I'm writing this. That's fine, but I'll put that inventiveness in my head to think, right, okay, cool, that's there. I'm reading a book at the moment by an author called Sam Mills, and she's written this book. It's about Will Self, the writer Will Self, and it's all thing. It's really interesting. And there was an opening paragraph that was like just like a punch in the face. It was like, wow, that like, well done. That is a great opening paragraph.
Yeah.
Can I emulate? Well, no, my opening paragraph needs to be this, and that's right in itself. But, the principle of that, the inventiveness of it, the idea behind it, I like that. I'll put that. So novels and stuff like that, I'm inspired by passages and things. I just watched a program called The White Lotus, which people probably come across. It's on Now TV, television series. That was just a really well put together show and like thing. I was like, that's good. And I'm watching that going, right, okay, it's got a little bit of politics in it, a bit of cool, a bit of design, a bit of fashion, a bit of comment, social comment, all this kind of stuff. And it's performed in a certain way, and it plays a narrative in a certain way. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. How can I play with that? And I'm just putting all of this stuff in me, and from all over, and I don't know where it goes. I don't know. It just bubbles. But what it allows me to do is when I'm then confronted with a piece of copy on Friday, and the copywriter sends this thing and goes, here's my email today, what do you think of this? And it says, dear reader, are you thinking about doing this thing? Are you thinking about becoming a milkshake brand company? And if you are, then maybe you'd be interested in our milkshakes, which are milkshakes and things. Because I read that great opening paragraph, that just got me straight into the action. I then look at that comment and go, what if we just deleted that first, if you are this person, and just assumed, because we know that they are, because they're on this list. What if we just opened and said, I want to use the Khalees song on my milkshake brick, but that's trying to be funny in the thing. But what if it just got straight to the action? That would be better. So I've got the inspiration for that. It's not come from a copywriting book. Don't get me wrong, there's copywriting books that will tell you to drop in on the action, but that's from that powerful opening paragraph I read in a book about Will Self. That's not like a copy bit. That's not a piece of marketing advice. Where will Diego Garcia, this weird political experimental novel, come into my life? I don't know yet, but it's in there. I remember writing in my book actually about listing everything I'd consumed that week, and I think I was watching The Sopranos at the time. I was listening to a Deftones record. I was listening to there was something else, I can't remember. Let's say it was Tom Waits or something, or what have you. But then, and I was like, I don't know how all of this will come together. But 2 weeks later, I was in a meeting or what have you, and someone was saying, oh, I want to be like, I'm making this up, but I want it like to be a really like creepy like thing or whatever, and it'd be like a kind of, like a Tom Waits kind of lyric, that's kind of thing. And I was like, oh right, yeah, no, I was listening, and that's where it came out. And this is, so you never know. I'm inspired by it. Well, I don't know what I'm inspired by is my annoyingly vague answer, but I know that I could be inspired by anything. I'm open to inspiration everywhere. It might be in an advert, it might be in like, oh, that brand's done that well, or what have you, but I don't really think in terms of that. And I think certainly for copywriters, I don't know if it's better for business owners to do so, but my gut feeling is to not think like who's doing what, just to look, that's interesting. Like the same way you might see your light and go, that's a nice light. Yeah, I might like that. And then when I'm redo my room in the new house that I moved to, I might go, I saw a light the other day that I like, and that might be the thing that I designed that around. It's the same for copy. It's the same for advertising. It's just seeing little bits all over the shop and going, all right, that's interesting. I've just seen a traditional trash can you've got over there. Trash can. I'm not American. Ruth would hit me if I said that. But a bin, and this, you might be too young to remember this, but there used to be Dusty Bin on this show. I think it's called 54321. And I can see that, and it looks a bit like Dusty Bin. What are you on about, Glenn? What I'm saying is that all of that stuff goes into my head. So now I know when I'm talking to a certain age of audience, and I can remember, you remember Dusty Bin kind of thing, and they go, yeah, I do. And I go, you remember the thing? And it's ways into people. So all of that inspiration, it's all just going in my head. And then when I need it, I've got more stuff to draw from. Me and Nick in Fix always saying, do not read books. Don't read my book and copy. Like, I would rather you go out and read a good book, a piece of literature, a good novel or something. I'd rather you read Grazia. You will get more if you know how to read it, if you know how to look at it, you'll get more from the latest issue of Grazia about how people think, about what they will buy, about what they say they'll buy, but will actually buy, about what they want to buy, about how language works, about how headlines work from that issue of Grazia. I'm not sponsored by Grazia, although I've got a friend who does work there. But like, you'll get more stuff from that by actually looking and taking inspiration from the stuff that's there. But don't spend too long worrying about like, oh, am I learning? Like, just spend time putting information in your head. That's what I find most inspiring, is like the little bits of detail that I'm always kind of looking for little bits of detail. And also I get inspired by the fact that little bits like that are what makes the difference. Like that's pretty exciting. That's like, wow, like a company, a brand watching this, it might be something so mundane as to like when you put the bin out tonight kind of thing, that moment of like that, oh, it's freezing and I hate putting the bin out. That might be, if you run a bin company, that's going to be your, oh, wait there, everybody has that feeling, don't they? Everybody has that, like, it's too cold, I'm going out in my socks and I'm trying to put the bin out and it's Sunday night or whatever. Wait there, I can speak to that. Like, that's the emotional place my customer is in. I can do it. So you've got to be inspired all the time by everything. But as I say, going back to what I was saying about being two places, the product that you're selling itself or the people, the best way to learn about people is to read what they're looking at. Get your ideal client, get your ideal customer. What are they? Where are they? What are they thinking? Doing all that kind of stuff. So I'm not massively inspired by any advertising, apart from, well, no, I'm not massively inspired by most advertising, to be honest with you. But that might be because it's like a busman's holiday, where it's like, I see it all the time. But I get inspired by just in people who are trying different things and are willing and are brave enough to like go, no, I'll try this differently. Like, I'll do this differently. That's the stuff I'm looking for. Like, oh, how is that different? How is that slightly more interesting? And that could be from books. It could be from TV series. It could be from fashion. It could be from like journalism. It could be from a film. It could be from an advert. It could be from anywhere. But it's just, what is different? What gets me? And being able to recognize that is a really important skill. Being able to recognize when you're genuinely interested in something without caring what other people think about it. And that's a key little add-on, because we all kind of go, oh yeah, no, I like that. Yeah, I like that. It's like, no, what do you actually like? Like, do you really like if I'm into like punk music and like alternative kind of stuff, but I when Britney Spears came out and there was that song Slave for You or whatever, that was a great pop song. I think it was when Pharrell Williams and Nerd and all that were producing all that stuff. And Justin Timberlake's album, the first Justin, that is a great record. It's just undeniably a great pop record. As someone who listens to like Fugazi or something, it's like, what are you listening to? You can't listen to it, but it's great. It's fantastic. That's interesting. It's those moments.
Yeah.
That's the stuff to like go, right, okay, that's where I want to know. That's something different, because it's against what I would normally be interested in.
Yeah.
It recognize those moments and again write them down, get a thing, and then when you get back to that meeting about ideas and like, how can we be different, you go, well, why was that so good? Why has that caught me? It's like, oh, because it's got a certain something to it or whatever, and you have to spend that time thinking. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know what I'm inspired by, but I'm inspired by interesting, inventive things. But that seems like a boring answer, but hopefully with the context that makes sense.
No, I think it's something that I think that kind of idea, I mean, I can relate to it, because it's kind of the way it manifests with me and Pete is kind of that intrigue. So when somebody approaches us, whatever industry sector, whatever they do, I just find it so interesting to, that person does what they do and they're good at that thing, or they sell that thing, or they just do that thing. They're interested in it, and it's like, why does it work? How have they come up with that? Why is it good?
Yeah.
Why? And it's that kind of, I guess, what, going back to like asking those initial questions. I think it helps when you're open to that. Like you said, you're looking at details, you're taking
Yeah.
them in.
I think it does
And
open, and also like you say, the person, when it comes to brand, speaking directly to like a brand owner or a product owner, you are the expert in that product. Like any good copywriter, and this is insider like tip for like employing a copywriter, any good copywriter will fundamentally know that you as the business owner already have all the answers inside them. You are the number one advocate for that product, and your passion and your interest in it is, I'm trying to put arbitrary figures on, but let's say it's 90% of it is there. Like you've got the thing. So a good copywriter should be asking you questions. If they're not asking you questions about stuff, you need to be like, hang on a minute, I've gone wrong here. But they should be picking your brain and doing that stuff. But on the other side of that also is the idea that you are the best person about a thing, but you and all that passion and that will inspire like yourself or me in our jobs to dig into you. But it's a relationship, and you will also, you as a filmmaker, me as a copywriter, will look at it and go, okay, right, taking all that your passion on board, thinking, but did you realize you're doing this as well? And they go, oh no, I don't see it like that because I've seen it this way. And to have that little bit of side thing and look around and go, but it's this as well. So as a business owner, I think you need to remember that. So value yourself and value your passion, and it's massive, and it's got all the answers are in there, but there's some bonus material in the interpretation of that from someone else, and someone else who's qualified, who knows how to look at this stuff, can look at you and give your business in a whole new light. And that is incredibly valuable. And it's somewhere between that. We're talking about being original, and creativity is bringing two things together. In a cute way, you could say it's finding that internal passion and fulfilling that of the product owner, of the business owner, of the brand owner, getting all of that maximized, and then crashing against the fresh view of a creative person, whether that be a filmmaker, a copywriter, a marketer, or give marketers kudos for being creative there. I don't know if that's right or not, but anybody creative looking at that and going, oh, I see all that, but I see this as well. If we bang them together, then we get something more, and that's when we get into an interesting space of ideas, and that's where you're more likely going to find that shoot for the 10 idea. Yeah. And the crazy stuff. It might fail, might be a completely misinterpreted interpretation of that business or whatever, and it might fail, but it's worth trying and exploring it.
Yeah. So what are you working on next? I know you mentioned novels.
At the moment, I'm working on like day-to-day work. I still like take on some clients here and there and do kind of copy stuff to keep me fresh and keep me involved, which I think is important, especially if I'm on another side preaching and telling people how to do it. So I'm just doing a few bits there across a couple of different things, which is boring. I won't go into it. But and then on the copy side, we're doing the Fix, and we do have a part of that which is a paid membership group, which is called the Fix Accelerator, which is copywriters and business owners stuff can join that, and we do like master classes. So I will literally talk about storytelling for an hour and how you can do it. I've done stuff on time management as a copywriter, on what have you, or just anything. And also if people request stuff. So we're doing that. And then we do an interview series like this, but with copywriters around the country and with copywriters from across the like spectrum. And that's all there. And we're just about to launch like a jobs board thing there. We're in a unique position where we know a lot of companies that need copywriters, and we know a lot of copywriters that need jobs. So we're just trying to find a cute way to like connect people and do that. So that's all with the Fix, which people will find if they're interested in. it is basically me and Nick just rambling about copying, and almost invariably nonsense as well, which we talk a lot of nonsense when we're together. And then, in my other, by night, when I don my Batman outfit and weirdly write in a cape, I am working on a novel. I've wrote one novel that was good, but not good enough. And I've just finished another one, which has taken a couple of years. And it's currently out with a few readers to have a look at it. And then I will be messing about with that a bit and then trying to find an agent. I want to write novels. I want to be given more freedom and more time to be able to do that. But I'm also not interested in, and this is not to say anything bad about self-publishing and all that kind of stuff, but I want to go through the process and through the various gatekeepers, however effing impossible that seems to be, because it's a very strange and annoying industry. But I would like to pitch it to agents, try and get an agent, and then have an ability to be able to put my more crazy ideas out there in the world. I just love writing. I love writing copy. I was working on copy yesterday, and I kind of reminded myself that I really like doing that. But I do love creating fictional worlds and stuff, and doing silly stuff and exploring my thoughts in that way. So I'd like to do that. I do briefly think, because I'm also a fantasist, thinking, when I inevitably get an agent, this is probably never going to happen, but if that happened, what would I do with my copy side of things? And I realised I don't think I'd ever be able to give either up. I'd just like to find a better balance between the two. Also, I'm working on a book with Nick, which we're going to do, which is about copy and ideas, which we have just started writing now. How long that will take, I don't know. Novels take years, but this will probably be quicker because we've been doing it for so long, so it kind of naturally can be written a bit quicker and easier. That will probably get out before any piece of fiction I ever write. But yeah, so it's just writing. But also, I've kind of got to an age now. Anybody older than me will just be laughing, going, "You're just a child." But I've got I'm entering into my middle life, and I hope so, and I am learning more and more to, rather than chasing things all the time, to enjoy the present moment. I have a very happy life with my partner Ruth and my little dog Pablo. So we just try and have fun. I think people forget to do that, or I certainly forgot to do that for a lot of my career. Was just kind of chasing and trying to achieve X, Y, and Z. But yeah, so just trying to have fun. And I've realised without being too twee, my greatest talent as a copywriter is my ability to be creative and think up fresh ideas. And the best way to think up fresh ideas is to be relaxed, to be in a place of zen, if you like, where you can look around a room and see, oh, that could be that could be this, that could be that. That's when stuff starts happening. So I need to respect myself, and I would encourage anybody else, creative people, to respect themselves enough to give yourself the time and space and to be creative. Sounds ridiculous. There's a great program called "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared." They just had it was on YouTube, but they've just had a Channel 4 series commissioned, and it aired, and it's brilliant. But they have a song which mocks there's one episode that mocks creativity, and it says, "I like to be creative," and it's a puppet show. It's very silly. So every time I say it now, I hear myself saying it, and I sound stupid like that program. But it's still true, and it is, to be creative and to do that stuff, you need to give yourself freedom and peace and lots of input and give yourself time. Like people say, how do you read so much, Glenn? It's like, because I give myself time to read. Oh, that sounds such a luxury. No, how can you be a creative person if you're not spending time reading, putting new information into you, putting new stimulus and new ideas into you? They won't. If you just
I think I saw it on one of your LinkedIn posts about even if you're starting out, because I saw you talked about making an hour every day to read.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about going and reading Ulysses for like our day. That's, as I say, go and read Grazia, go and read 442 magazine if you're into footy, go and read into like anything, lowbrow, highbrow. If you don't like reading, listen to an audiobook. If you don't like the concept of words delivered as an image or sound, watch a TV program, like whatever it is. I hate it, but watch Coronation Street. You'll learn stuff from it, whatever it is, but just give yourself time to think and be at peace, and have that stimulus, because it's too important not to have it. You won't be able to be creative and think. Anybody who wants you to sit and write for 9 hours a day or 8 hours a day or however long people are employed, there's something fundamentally wrong with that. Like I'll write for 2 hours a day, possibly, if I'm lucky. Or I'll certainly get 2 good hours. There's no way anyone can write like from 8 till 5. It's just obscene. The idea of it is insane. I've worked out you can probably write about 1,500 words a day, decent. And that's, so like, do the math. That's not going to work if you just sat there 8 hours a day. It's just silly. So be as much freedom as you can give yourself. Try and do that. So I'm trying to do that with myself more now, and it seems to work. I produce videos for the Fix, do masterclasses, meet up, go around the country. We go out, me and Ruth go out, do loads of lovely stuff together. I read loads of books. I write loads of stuff. I've written a second novel in like 2 years. I mean, they might be crap and I might just go, no. But I'm genuinely taking time to do it. I've spent a lot of time, and I look at it like, and do the hours in the day calculation and go, well, that doesn't really make sense. How did that happen? But it's because I'm more at peace with that kind of stuff. So I think I'll just try and keep doing that. But yeah, I think that's what I do. I might do other stuff that I've not told you about, but I'm not sure. I want to go and see Ant-Man. Going to the cinema during the day, that's the other thing I like doing.
Yeah.
That's the freedom of a freelancer. So yeah, that's...
Yeah. No, I must admit I've done that before, and it's
revolutionary. Yeah.
So how can people follow what you're up to? With
they can follow me by, well, I'm just about to move to Sheffield, so you can go to Sheffield and hang out in local pubs, and you might see me there. Not that I drink much these days, but you can find me on Twitter at allgoodcopy. You can find me on Instagram at glenn.fisher with 2 N's. You can find me on LinkedIn. Presumably, you just search Glenn Fisher. I don't know how you find, but I think I'm one of the more known Glenn Fishers. I think I'm number 1 on Google now. Possibly, there used to be an ice hockey player in Canada, but I think I've overcome that by belligerently posting things on the internet. So you can find me on the internet. But I'm most active probably on LinkedIn and Instagram at the moment. Instagram, fair warning, is just me posting pictures of my dog Pablo mainly, and books. LinkedIn, we try and share value stuff there, but I do slip into just nonsense. Twitter, I'm a bit overwhelmed by Twitter at the moment. It's a bit of a mess as a usable platform. They all go that way, but you can find me on then, or you can go to, if you want a bit of copywriting like know-how. You can follow The Fix, which is at thefixcopywriting.com. And there's a channel on YouTube. So we have a load of free videos, which is me and Nick reviewing pieces of copy that people send in. You can send copy in. You guys can send copy in if you want. But anyone watching can send copy into that. And we literally will record me and Nick looking at it going, well, what if it said this? What if it did this? What if it did that? And that's all free. And we try and do 1 a week of that. And then we have the paid side, which is £10 a month. And that gets you access to like that. You can send in as much copy then to us as you want, but you also get all the masterclass stuff. We do an hour's live feed on a Friday on camera kind of thing, where you can like ask us questions, issues, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, my Facebook is not a place that anyone should ever go to. I'm very close to closing down my Facebook, so don't follow me on Facebook. That's a dead place for me. But yeah, other than that, drop me an email. You can find. Sounds like a really arrogant thing, but I'm on the internet. God damn it, I wish I wasn't. But yeah, you can quite easily find me if you want, and you can read the book if you want. But don't read Grazia instead. You'll learn more about copywriting from reading Grazia, in my humble opinion. But yeah.
Well, thank you very much for
Thank you.
joining us today, and thank you to everyone for listening.